I'm Natalie, 28, and 2 hours before walking down the aisle, I borrowed my fiancé Jason's phone to call the florist. That's when I saw it, 3 text notifications from my sister Melanie. Curious. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If my journey resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me take you back to how this all began. Jason and I met 3 years ago at my college friend Kara's 4th of July barbecue. I wasn't planning to go that day. I had a deadline for a graphic design project, but Kara insisted, saying she had someone she wanted me to meet. Reluctantly, I went, expecting nothing. Then I saw him across the yard, helping Kara's husband with the grill, laughing with this magnetic smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He was tall with sandy brown hair that kept falling across his forehead. Considerate gesture was my first clue to who Jason was, or who I thought he was. We talked for hours that day, long after other guests had left. He was a civil engineer who loved his job designing bridges. "I build connections," he said, and I remember thinking how fitting that was for him. By midnight, we'd exchanged numbers. And he texted me the very next morning asking if I'd like to get coffee. Our relationship progressed naturally. Jason was the perfect boyfriend, attentive without being clingy. He surprised me with a small Wacom tablet I'd been eyeing but couldn't afford. For my favorite artist, the card read. Little gestures like that made me fall deeper in love with him. After dating for a year, we decided to move in together. My lease was ending, and rather than renew it, we found a cozy 2-bedroom apartment with a small office space where I could work. The transition was seamless. Our furniture complemented each other's, our routines meshed well, and even our occasional disagreements were resolved with respect and understanding. What made our relationship even more special was how well Jason integrated into my family. My father, a retired English professor who was typically reserved around my previous boyfriends, warmed up to Jason immediately. They bonded over their shared love of historical documentaries and fishing trips. My mom adored him too, always commenting on how he helped in the kitchen without being asked, something my dad never did in 40 years of marriage. Then there was my sister Melanie, 2 years younger than me. As adults, we'd grown even closer, talking almost daily and meeting for weekly coffee dates. Melanie was single when Jason and I met, having recently broken up with her long-term boyfriend Tyler. Jason and Melanie hit it off right away, sharing the same dry sense of humor. I was thrilled that my sister and my boyfriend got along so well. Sometimes the three of us would hang out together, watching movies or trying new restaurants. Jason even helped Melanie move apartments and fix her car when it broke down. I remember feeling so lucky that my partner cared about my family as much as I did. The proposal came 2 years into our relationship, at the same restaurant where we'd had our first official date. Jason seemed nervous all evening, barely touching his food. When dessert arrived, there was a small velvet box next to my chocolate souffle. He got down on one knee right there in the restaurant. And through tears, I said yes as the entire restaurant applauded. It was perfect, exactly the kind of thoughtful, meaningful moment that characterized our relationship. Wedding planning began immediately. We set a date for the following summer, giving us 6 months to prepare. Melanie was the obvious choice for my maid of honor, and she enthusiastically accepted. Together, we dove into the details: venue hunting, cake tasting, flower arrangements. Jason was unusually involved for a groom, offering opinions on everything from the invitation design to the menu selection. Looking back, there were subtle signs I missed. Melanie gradually became less available for wedding planning sessions, citing work commitments. When she did join us, she was quieter than usual, contributing less to the conversations. I attributed her withdrawal to her recent promotion at the marketing firm where she worked. She'd been putting in long hours to prove herself in her new role. Jason, too, had changed slightly. He became more protective of his phone, always keeping it face down or in his pocket. A few times, I noticed him stepping out of the room to take calls. When I asked who it was, he'd say work or just spam. I never questioned it further. We trusted each other completely, and I wasn't the type to snoop. The week before the wedding was a whirlwind of final preparations. Jason seemed distracted, which I assumed was pre-wedding jitters. Melanie was helping with last-minute details, but kept our interactions brief and task-focused. Again, I chalked it up to stress and busyness. The night before the wedding, we followed tradition and stayed separately, Jason with his best man, me with my parents at their house. Melanie had planned to stay over too, but texted that she needed to finish some work and would come directly to the venue in the morning. I was disappointed but understood, transforming me into the bride I dreamed of being. Everything was going according to plan. Until it wasn't. The call from the florist came just as my makeup artist was finishing my eyeshadow. There was a problem with the centerpieces. They'd received white hydrangeas instead of the blush ones we'd ordered. My phone was buried somewhere in my overnight bag, and in my panic state, I remembered Jason had left his phone charger for me to use. His phone was right there on the dresser, plugged in. I'll just use Jason's phone to call them back, I told my mom, picking it up. The screen lit up with the passcode request, which I knew his mother's birthday. 3 notifications appeared immediately, all text messages from Melanie. The preview showed snippets. On my way to the venue now. Can we talk before? Getting harder to. I felt a twinge of curiosity. Why was my sister texting my fiancé this much on our wedding day? Maybe they were coordinating some surprise for me. That would be just like them. Without thinking too much about it, I opened the messages. The most recent ones were indeed about logistics for the day, but something in their tone felt off, too familiar, too intimate somehow. I scrolled up, just a little, telling myself I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. What I saw made my blood run cold. Melanie, I can't stop thinking about yesterday. Are you sure we're doing the right thing? Jason. Sitting on the edge of the bathtub, I scrolled further back through their conversation. At first, the messages seemed innocent enough, discussions about wedding details, family matters. Normal things a bride, sister, and groom might discuss. But as I went back weeks, then months, the tone changed. There were inside jokes I wasn't privy to. References to meetings I knew nothing about. Complaints about me, my stress level, my obsession with wedding details, my work schedule. Things that should have been discussed with me. Reinterpreting every interaction, every excuse, every canceled plan. All those times Melanie said she was working late. The weekends Jason went golfing with clients. The way they sometimes fell silent when I entered a room. I continued scrolling, my vision blurring with tears that I refused to let fall and ruin my perfectly applied makeup. The messages revealed they'd been meeting secretly, coffee shops across town, a hiking trail I'd never been to, once even at our apartment when I was at a weekend conference. I felt physically ill. My stomach churning as I read Jason's words to my sister. I've never felt this way about anyone. Not even Natalie. And Melanie's response, we need to tell her. After the honeymoon. It's only fair. Tell me what? That they'd been having an affair? That my fiancé and my sister had betrayed me in the worst possible way? My mind spun with possibilities, each more painful than the last. Try to act normal. Act normal. As if what they were doing was abnormal, which it absolutely was. The casual cruelty of that phrase struck me like a physical blow. I heard my mother knocking at the bathroom door, asking if everything was all right. Just wedding jitters, I called back, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. I'll be out in a minute. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the elegant updo with tiny pearl pins, the perfect winged eyeliner. The flush of blush that now seemed like a mockery of the natural color that had drained from my face. In less than 2 hours. Sneaking around behind my back while I remained oblivious? I took a deep breath, then another. The initial shock was giving way to something else, a cold, clear anger that sharpened my thoughts. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I decided what to do. And the only way to do that was to keep reading. With trembling fingers, but newfound determination. I continued scrolling through the messages, going back further in time. I needed to understand when and how this betrayal began, to see the full picture of what had been happening behind my back. 6 months ago, around the time of our engagement, the texts were normal. Melanie congratulating Jason on the proposal, discussing her maid of honor duties, sharing her excitement. Nothing suspicious. 5 months ago, subtle changes appeared. More frequent messages. Jason asking Melanie's advice about a gift for me. Melanie suggesting they meet for coffee to discuss a surprise bridal shower. Innocent enough on the surface, but now I could see these meetings as the beginning of something else. 4 months ago. I'm glad we've gotten closer. Jason, me too. More than you know. A week later. Melanie, had fun today. We should make these coffee meetings a regular thing. Jason, definitely. It's nice to talk to someone who gets the real me. The real him? What did that mean? Wasn't I getting the real him? The implication that I somehow didn't understand my own fiancé cut deeply. But I don't care. Melanie, neither do I. Same time next week? The messages continued, growing increasingly intimate. Jason, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met first? Melanie, we shouldn't go there. Jason, but you've thought about it too, haven't you? Melanie, yes. And it scares me. I felt sick reading their words. Imagining them sitting across from each other at some cafe, having these conversations while I was working or planning our wedding. The wedding that now seemed like a cruel joke. 2 months ago. The true nature of their relationship became undeniable. Jason, I think I'm falling for you. I've never felt this connection with anyone. Melanie, Jason, we can't. She's my sister. This is wrong. Jason, I know. But I can't help how I feel. Melanie, what about the wedding? Jason, I don't know. I'm confused about everything right now. I closed my eyes, letting that sink in. 2 months ago, while I was choosing wedding flowers and writing my vows, my fiancé was telling my sister he was falling for her. And my sister, while expressing token resistance. But causing a scene right before the wedding would be cruel. So they had decided to let me go through with the wedding, spend my honeymoon with a man who was in love with my sister. And then break the news when we returned. Their concern wasn't for my feelings, but for the social awkwardness of canceling a wedding at the last minute. The most painful messages were the most recent ones from the past week. Jason, I tried to talk to her last night, but I couldn't do it. She was so happy talking about our future. Melanie. I know. I feel physically ill every time she calls me about wedding details. Jason, what have we done, Mel? Melanie, fallen into something we shouldn't have. Jason. But it doesn't feel wrong when I'm with you. Melanie, I know. That's what makes it so complicated. And then yesterday's exchange, which I'd already seen. Melanie. One more day and then we figure this out. I can't keep lying to her. Jason, I know. It's killing me too. See you tomorrow. Try to act normal. I set the phone down. My mind racing to process everything I'd read. The story was clear now. My fiancé and my sister had developed feelings for each other while planning my wedding. They'd been meeting secretly for months, growing closer while I remained oblivious. They hadn't physically cheated, at least they hadn't admitted to that in their texts, but the emotional betrayal was just as devastating. They were planning to go through with the wedding, then break my heart afterward. The cowardice of it was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. They couldn't even give me the dignity of knowing the truth before I made vows to a man who didn't want to keep them. A text notification popped up on the screen, Melanie again. Just arrived at the venue. You were right, the flowers are all wrong. Handling it now. See you soon. She was already there, handling wedding details as if nothing was wrong. But something else emerged, determination. I would not be their victim. I would not play the role they had cast me in, the oblivious bride who would be let down gently after her sham honeymoon. I took a deep breath and unlocked the bathroom door. I had decisions to make, and not much time to make them. When I emerged from the bathroom. Mom. Just a little overwhelmed. The lie came easily, though I hated myself for it. But I couldn't tell her yet. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. You don't look fine. Is it nerves? It's normal to be nervous, sweetheart. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The makeup artist approached with her brush, ready to touch up whatever my wedding jitters had smudged. Give me a few minutes, I told them. I need to make a call. I retreated to the bedroom, Jason's phone still clutched in my hand. My own phone was charging on the nightstand, and I grabbed it, needing to appear normal. 3 missed calls from the wedding planner, a text from my college roommate who was stuck in traffic, and several congratulatory messages. The ordinary concerns of a wedding day that now seemed like they belonged to someone else's life. I sat on the edge of the bed, my elaborate dress carefully arranged around me, and considered my options. Option 1. Cancel everything immediately. Make an announcement to the guests already arriving, pack my bags, and disappear. The thought was tempting in its simplicity, but it would leave too many questions unanswered. Too many loose ends. Option 2. Confront Jason and Melanie right now, before the ceremony. Force them to admit what they'd done. Make them face me and explain themselves. Option 3. The most shocking option that flitted through my mind, go through with the wedding, say nothing, and confront them after the honeymoon as they'd planned to confront me. The poetic justice appealed to me for a brief, vindictive moment before I dismissed it. I could never go through with vows I knew were meaningless. I closed my eyes, thinking back over the past few months, re-examining memories with my new knowledge. Jason and Melanie talking intently at my engagement party, their conversation stopping when I approached. Melanie helping Jason choose my birthday gift, a weekend spa package that conveniently gave them time alone. The Sunday brunches Melanie skipped because she was working, while Jason was supposedly playing golf. How had I been so blind? The signs were there, but I'd trusted them both completely. That trust now felt like the most bitter kind of foolishness. The first look, where Jason would see me in my wedding dress for the first time. The photographer would capture his reaction, supposedly of awe and love. The thought of going through with that charade made bile rise in my throat. Another knock at the door. My father this time. Natalie? Your mother's worried about you. Come in, Dad, I said. My voice caught slightly. He sat beside me, immediately sensing my distress. What is it? You can tell me anything, you know that. For a moment. The thought almost made me smile. But this was my problem to solve, my heart that had been broken. I needed to face them myself. Just wedding day jitters, I said. Everything's happening so fast. He patted my hand. It's not too late to change your mind, you know. If you're having doubts. I'm not having doubts, Dad, I interrupted. At least, not the kind you're thinking of. Can you ask the wedding planner to delay everything by 30 minutes? Tell her there's an issue with my dress that needs fixing. Is there? No, but I need some time. Please, Dad. It's important. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. All right. 30 minutes. After he left, I texted Jason from my phone. Need to see you ASAP. Private room off the main hall. Just you. Emergency. Then I texted Melanie. Meet me in the private room off the main hall. Now. Don't tell anyone. I checked myself in the mirror one more time, straightened my shoulders, and headed downstairs. It was empty, with just a few chairs and a small table. Perfect for what I needed to do. I placed both phones on the table, mine and Jason's, and sat down to wait. My heart was pounding, but my mind was suddenly, crystallinely clear. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I heard footsteps approaching. The door handle turned. It was time. Jason entered first, his bow tie still undone, concern etched across his face. The face I had loved, trusted. Planned to wake up to every morning for the rest of my life. Nat? What's wrong? Your dad said. He stopped short when he saw me sitting there in my wedding dress, expression calm. His eyes darted to the phones on the table, then back to my face. What's going on? We're waiting for one more person, I said evenly. Who? The door opened again, and Melanie rushed in. I held up a hand to silence her. I borrowed Jason's phone this morning to call the florist. I saw your texts. I've read them all. The silence that followed was deafening. Jason's face drained of color, while Melanie seemed to physically shrink, her shoulders hunching forward as if to protect herself from a blow. Nat, I can explain, Jason finally said. Can you? Can you explain why my fiancé and my sister have been sneaking around behind my back for months? Why are in love with each other, but still letting me go through with this wedding? Please. Silent tears tracking through her carefully applied makeup. We never meant for this to happen, Natalie. You have to believe that. Actually, I don't have to believe anything you say anymore. That's the one benefit of having my trust completely shattered. I turned to Jason. When did it start? The exact moment you realized you had feelings for my sister. I want to know. Jason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. It was gradual. We spent time together planning your bridal shower, the honeymoon surprise. The honeymoon surprise? I interrupted. Is that why you've been meeting secretly? You were planning a surprise for me. Initially, yes, Melanie said quickly. It started innocently, I swear. Jason wanted to plan a special honeymoon for you, and he asked for my help since I know all your dream destinations. But then, Jason continued. Then you fell in love, I finished for him. Over coffee dates and secret meetings, while planning my wedding and a honeymoon we'll never take. Neither of them denied it. Did you sleep together? The question came out before I could stop it, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. No, they both exclaimed simultaneously, with such force that I almost believed them. Never, Jason added. It wasn't physical, Natalie. Just emotional, I said. Just falling in love and planning a future together. Behind my back, Melanie stepped forward. We were going to tell you. After the honeymoon, I cut in. Yes, I read that part too. How considerate of you both. To let me go through with a sham wedding and honeymoon before dropping the bomb that my husband and sister want to be together. We didn't know what to do, Jason said, his voice pleading. Everything okay in there? His tone was suspicious. No, I said softly, then louder. No, Dad, everything is not okay. Can you come in, please? Jason and Melanie exchanged panicked looks as my father entered. He assessed the scene quickly, my rigid posture, Jason's ashen face, Melanie's tears. What's happened? He demanded. I took a deep breath. Dad, the wedding is off. Jason and Melanie have been having an emotional affair for months. They're in love with each other. Dad, Don't dad me right now, he snapped. I can't even look at you. We should focus on what to do about the wedding, I said, surprised by my own practicality. The guests are arriving. I'll handle it, my father said immediately. I'll tell everyone. No, I interrupted. I'll do it. This is my wedding, my life. I need to be the one to face everyone. Jason stepped forward. Natalie, please, can we talk privately? Maybe there's still. Still what, Jason? I asked, my composure finally cracking. Still a way to salvage this? Still a chance you'll choose me over my sister? Is that what you want? To marry a woman you don't love while pining for her sister? What kind of life would that be for any of us? He had no answer. I need to do this myself. As my father left to arrange things, I looked at Jason and Melanie one last time. I want both of you to be there when I make the announcement. You owe me that much. You can stand in the back, but you will watch me clean up this mess you've made. Without waiting for their response, I walked out, head held high despite the weight crushing my chest. The hardest part was still to come. Walking down the hallway toward the ceremony space felt surreal. This was the path I was supposed to take later, on my father's arm, to begin my life with Jason. Now I was walking it alone, to end something before it even truly began. The wedding planner intercepted me, eyes widening at the sight of me fully dressed, but clearly walking the wrong way at the wrong time. Natalie, what are you doing? The guests are still arriving. And you're not supposed to be seen before. The wedding is cancelled, Andrea, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. What? But please gather everyone who's already here in the ceremony space. I need to make an announcement. She stared at me, speechless for perhaps the first time in her career. Natalie, what happened? Is there anything I can? Not unless you can make my fiancé and sister fall out of love with each other, I said with a bitter smile. Please, just help me get everyone together. The sooner I do this, the sooner it's over. Andrea's professional composure reasserted itself quickly. Of course. Give me 10 minutes to gather everyone. As she hurried off, I stood alone in the hallway, taking deep breaths. My mother appeared, her face tight with concern. Natalie, your father told me, is it true? Jason and Melanie. I nodded, unable to form words as my mother pulled me into a fierce hug. I am so sorry, baby. So sorry. She held me at arm's length, examining my face. What can I do? Stand with me when I tell everyone, I said. I don't want to do it alone. Of course. You'll never be alone, sweetheart. 10 minutes later, I stood at the entrance to the ceremony space, where white chairs were arranged in neat rows facing an arch of flowers under which Jason and I were supposed to exchange vows. Most of the guests were seated now, murmuring in confusion about the change in schedule. My father stood on one side of me, my mother on the other. In the back of the room, I spotted Jason and Melanie, standing apart from each other, both looking miserable. Good, I thought. They should be miserable. I took a deep breath and began walking down the aisle, not as a bride walking toward her future. All of them here to celebrate a union that would never happen. Thank you all for coming today, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but there will be no wedding today. A collective gasp went through the room, followed by murmurs of shock and confusion. I discovered this morning that Jason, the man I was planning to marry, has developed feelings for someone else. I deliberately didn't mention Melanie by name, not to protect her, but because I couldn't bear to say the words out loud in front of all these people. We cannot and will not be getting married. Jason's mother let out a small cry from the front row. Other relatives were whispering urgently to each other. My college roommate Kara, who had introduced us at that fateful barbecue, had her hand over her mouth in shock. I want to thank you all for the love and support you've shown us. I'm sorry for any inconvenience this has caused, especially for those who traveled to be here. There will, of course, be no reception. But please feel free to stay and enjoy some refreshments before you leave. My parents and I would be grateful for your understanding and privacy during this difficult time. With that, I turned and walked back down the aisle, head high, eyes forward, refusing to let my gaze drift to where Jason and Melanie stood. Some guests reached out as I passed, offering hands of support or murmured condolences. I acknowledged them with slight nods, but didn't stop. In the hallway, away from prying eyes, my composure finally broke. My father caught me as my knees buckled, guiding me to a private room where I could fall apart without an audience. You did beautifully, my mother said, stroking my hair as I sobbed. So brave. So dignified. What do I do now? I asked through tears. Everything was planned around this wedding, this marriage. Where do I even go from here? Home with us, for now, my father said firmly. We'll figure out the rest later. As my parents comforted me, the wedding planner appeared at the door, her face sympathetic. Natalie, I'm so sorry. What would you like me to do about everything? The gifts, the vendors, the arrangements. It was such a practical question that it actually helped center me. There were logistics to handle, tasks to focus on besides my broken heart. I said, and I want an honest answer. Were you going to go through with the wedding knowing how you felt about her? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I thought maybe it was just confusion. Cold feet. That once we were married, these feelings would go away. And if they didn't? What then? He had no answer. That's what I thought. I said quietly, "Goodbye, Jason." I turned away, letting my parents lead me toward the exit. As we passed through the reception area, where tables were set with fine china and crystal that would never be used, where a 3-tier cake stood waiting to be cut by a bride and groom who would never taste it, I felt a strange sense of closure. This wasn't how I had imagined my wedding day ending. But as I walked away from the venue, away from Jason, away from the future I had planned, I realized that endings can also be beginnings. I just didn't know yet what this was the beginning of. 1 month after the wedding that wasn't, I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. The space was smaller than the one Jason and I had shared, but it was mine alone, a fresh start. The days immediately following the canceled wedding had been a blur of painful logistics. My parents had handled most of it, the awkward explanations to extended family, the returning of gifts, the cancellation of the honeymoon. I had stayed in my childhood bedroom, alternating between numbness and crushing pain. Jason had moved out of our apartment while I was at my parents' house, taking only his personal belongings and leaving behind a letter I couldn't bring myself to read for 2 weeks. When I finally did, it contained what I expected: more apologies. Explanations of how his feelings for Melanie had developed unexpectedly, assurances that they had never physically cheated. As if that made it better somehow. Melanie had tried to contact me multiple times: calls, texts, even a handwritten letter slipped under my parents' door. I had ignored them all. Perhaps someday I would be ready to hear her out, to attempt to rebuild some semblance of a sisterly relationship, but that day was not yet on the horizon. The hardest part had been the isolation. My friends tried to be supportive, but they didn't know how to act around me. What do you say to someone whose fiancé and sister fell in love behind her back? The conventional breakup platitudes: plenty of fish in the sea. His loss seemed woefully inadequate for the double betrayal I had experienced. But gradually, unexpected sources of support emerged. My boss had given me all the time off I needed and sent a gorgeous plant to my new apartment with a note saying my job was waiting whenever I was ready. My elderly neighbor from the old apartment building had shown up with homemade soup and sat with me in comfortable silence. And most surprisingly, Jason's cousin Mia, who I'd always gotten along with, reached out to say she was disgusted by what had happened and valued our friendship independently of Jason. 3 weeks after the non-wedding, I had finally started therapy. Dr. Lisa Carter was a straight-talking woman in her 50s who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Our first session had been difficult. Just saying the words, "My fiancé fell in love with my sister," out loud to a stranger had made me break down completely. What you're experiencing is a unique kind of grief, Dr. Carter had explained. You're mourning multiple losses simultaneously: the loss of your relationship with Jason, your relationship with your sister, and the future you had envisioned. It's going to take time to process all of that. She had been right. The grief came in waves, sometimes receding enough that I could function normally for hours at a time, sometimes crashing over me so violently that I could barely breathe. But I was learning to ride those waves rather than being pulled under by them. Today marked 1 month since the day that should have been my wedding day. I had taken the day off work, unsure how I would feel, but determined to commemorate it somehow. Not with sadness or self-pity, but with some small act of reclamation. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was a delivery, the custom desk I had ordered for my new home office. The one purchase I had made for myself that wasn't a necessity, but a declaration. I was rebuilding my life, starting with a space to pursue my graphic design work. As the delivery men assembled it in the second bedroom, I felt a small spark of excitement. This desk represented my future, one I was designing myself, not tied to anyone else's betrayal or decisions. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Thinking of you today. Proud of how you're handling everything. Love you." My father had been my rock through all of this. He had helped me find this apartment, had driven the rental truck with my belongings, had assembled furniture and hung pictures. More importantly, he had listened without judgment as I cycled through anger, grief, and occasional moments of irrational guilt. After the delivery men left, I sat at my new desk, running my hands over the smooth wood surface. On impulse, I opened my laptop and pulled up the freelance design website I had somewhat neglected while planning the wedding. There were several requests for quotes waiting in my inbox, potential new clients who had seen my portfolio and wanted to work with me. For the first time in a month, I felt a stirring of professional enthusiasm. I began responding to the inquiries, describing my design process, quoting rates that reflected my true value rather than the discounted prices I had often accepted when I was working around wedding planning. That evening, I met Kara for dinner, our first real outing since the wedding debacle. I had been avoiding her partly because she had introduced me to Jason, and seeing her reminded me of that first meeting. "You look good," she said as we sat down at a small Italian restaurant downtown. "I mean, considering everything." "Thanks, I think," I replied with a small smile. "I'm taking it day by day." "I still can't believe what they did." Kara shook her head. "Jason seemed so devoted to you." "I thought so too," I said, taking a sip of water to ease the tightness in my throat. but I'm trying not to dwell on it anymore. Tell me what's new with you. As Kara caught me up on her life, I found myself genuinely engaged in the conversation, asking questions, laughing at her stories about her toddler's latest antics. It felt good to focus on someone else's life, to step outside my own pain for a while. Oh, Kara said suddenly. I almost forgot to tell you. Remember Alex from the marketing department at my old job? He asked about you. Alex. I vaguely recalled a tall, quiet man with kind eyes who I'd met at Kara's company Christmas party years ago. What did he ask? If you were seeing anyone, Kara said, watching my reaction carefully. I told him it was complicated and probably too soon, but that I'd mention it to you. It is too soon, I agreed, though I was surprised to feel a tiny flutter of something that wasn't complete aversion to the idea. Not interest exactly, but not dismissal either. But maybe in the future. I don't know. It's nice to know not everyone sees me as damaged goods. No one who matters sees you that way, Kara said firmly. What happened says everything about Jason and Melanie and nothing about you. As I walked home from dinner, I reflected on how different this evening had felt compared to just a week ago. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I was beginning to have moments, even hours, where my primary identity wasn't the woman whose fiancé fell for her sister. 6 months after the non-wedding, I stood in my fully furnished apartment, surveying the space that had become a true home. My graphic design business was thriving. I had more clients than I could handle and was considering hiring an assistant. The creative resurgence that had begun that day at my new desk had continued, leading to some of my best work. My healing wasn't linear. There were still days when something would trigger the pain anew, seeing a couple that resembled Jason and me, stumbling across an old photo, hearing our song in a store. But those moments no longer derailed me completely. I had started reconnecting with old friends who had given me space after the wedding disaster. People I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Jason, assuming we would have a lifetime to maintain those friendships. Now I recognized the value of those connections that existed independently of my romantic status. As for my family, that remained complicated. My parents had struggled to deal with Melanie's betrayal, torn between their anger at her actions and their love for their younger daughter. I had encouraged them to maintain their relationship with her, assuring them I didn't expect them to choose sides. It was a messy, imperfect situation, but we were all doing our best to navigate it. I had finally agreed to meet Melanie for coffee 3 months after the wedding. It had been awkward and painful, with more tears than actual conversation. She had tried to explain how it happened, the initial innocent meetings, the growing connection, the guilt and confusion. I had listened without offering absolution. We had parted with no promises of reconciliation, but a tacit acknowledgement that we were still sisters, still connected by blood, if not by the easy closeness we once shared. Jason I had not seen again, though I had heard through mutual friends that he and Melanie were officially dating now. The news had stung but not destroyed me. In some ways, it validated my decision to walk away. They really did have feelings for each other. It hadn't just been confusion or cold feet. As I prepared for a small dinner party, my first time hosting friends in my new place, I realized how far I had come from that devastating morning when I found the texts. The betrayal had broken my heart but not my spirit. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, creating something that was entirely mine, not defined by my relationship status or by what had been done to me. The doorbell rang and I went to welcome my guests, a genuine smile on my face. Among them was Alex, Kara's former coworker, who I had finally agreed to get to know better. We weren't dating officially, but there was a tentative friendship developing that held the possibility of something more when I was ready. Later that evening, as conversation and laughter filled my apartment, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. I looked happy, engaged with life, surrounded by people who valued me for myself. The woman who had stood alone before her wedding guests and announced the cancellation with dignity was still there. But she was no longer defined solely by that moment of pain. Betrayal can break your heart, but it cannot break your spirit unless you allow it to. Trust, once shattered, can be rebuilt, not in the same form, perhaps, but in a wiser, more resilient version. I had learned that the hard way, but I had learned it thoroughly. And in the end, that lesson might prove more valuable than the marriage that never was. If you've ever experienced betrayal from the people closest to you, I hope my story shows you that healing is possible. It's not quick or easy, but day by day, choice by choice, you can rebuild your life on your own terms. I'd love to hear your stories of resilience in the comments below. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their journey. Thank you for listening to my story. We're all stronger than we know until being strong is the only choice we have.